Well folks, welcome back to the workshop to another new tool teardown video. Today up on the bench we've got the brand new Hikoki DH40MEY2. We're going to tear this thing apart and have a look at it to see what it's like on the inside. So this here's a collaboration video with Hikoki. As you know, about 5 months ago they actually sent in about 7 or 8 machines for teardown videos, and this is one of them. So we're going to get on with this one this evening and do a full teardown on this thing. So this is the Hikoki DH40MEY2 Rotary demolition hammer, and this is the one with the brushless motor. So interesting to see what this thing's going to be like, because I know they also have the Metabo range as well. The Metabo version of this here is a fantastic machine, and we're getting lots of good reviews on it and liking it myself as well. So I'm very interested to see if this here is quite similar, because if it is, I would definitely be recommending this thing. But we're not going to bother with the specs in this thing. We just want to know what she's like on the inside. So let's get onto it and actually tear the thing apart and see what she's like. So this here is a 110 volt version, but obviously you get them 240 volt as well. And it comes with a nice older style box. It's one of the things I like about Hikoki. They still have these types. Not very heavy, but because it's so flexible, they're a lot harder to actually break. Like some of those harder plastic ones, get a knock, they just break corners and clips off. These here actually last surprisingly a long time, mainly because they are so flexible. But who cares about the box? Let's get on with the tool. This here is actually quite a nice hammer. Like I was saying, I've done several videos on the Metabo versions of these here, and I'm hoping this here is just basically the exact same, because the Metabo ones are actually quite good, but I've never seen one of these ones coming on. This here is the Hikoki. This is the LVP, which is user vibration protection, same as most hammers. They've got dampers back here and springs to stop the vibrations getting into your hand. You need it on a hammer like this here. But Hikoki, Hitachi have had stuff like this go back the last 20 or 30 years. Even the older ones had wee rubber dampers up in here for the exact same thing. So let's get into this thing. Now, before I start, I could take this out the back and take it to a piece of concrete and do a bit of chipping with it and put a butt in it and drill into a concrete wall, not do a full test on it and a review and see how good it does function wise. But to be honest, let's face it, there's not really much point. It's a brand new rotary hammer. It's going to hammer and it's going to drill. There's not much point in me taking out and showing you how it works. You know how a hammer works, and testing is not really going to give you much information. Obviously, it's brand new to the box. Doesn't matter if it was a €10 hammer or a €5,000 hammer, it's going to work straight out of the box. So not going to do much with that there. But I will run it because we want to hear what it sounds like first. But mainly because whenever I get this thing rebuilt again, I wouldn't mind making sure I've done it right, so there's not making any strange noises. We can see what it sounds like now and later to make sure everything's right. But these things do actually run a lot quieter. That's mainly because of the brushless motor, and the other thing is the base. No big holes, vents in the base of this thing, because obviously it's a brushless motor. It does not generate as much heat. A brushless motor has brushes, and the brushes make heat. The harder and stronger you run it, and the longer, the more heat it generates. If you're doing chipping and that sort of stuff, these do get quite hot if you're running it for a few hours. You know, if you're doing chasing and that, you're taking out tracks. A brush motor will get a lot hotter. These don't have the same problem because they're brushless. There's no friction on the motor. There's no brushes touching it. It's an electronic controller telling the field when to energize to keep the rotor spinning. So there's no actual contact. Saves energy on how much power you're using. Not that anybody cares on a building site about that there. But it does produce a lot less heat and a lot less noise. So function wise, she does sound good. She's got obviously chipping mode where she's hammering only, and then you have the 2 zeros, which is hammer mode as well, but the tool holder is able to rotate on it, as in it's not fixed, so you can adjust the chisel. That can be sometimes a problem in the Metabo one, where she locks in after a bit of time. But to be honest, that's the main problem we've seen with the Metabo, and it ain't that expensive a thing to fix. And the other setting then is the rotary hammer mode. Now, because she's a brushless, she obviously has speed control. You have 4 different speed settings, and a ticket that works in the hammer mode as well. Yeah, so you can do some nice gentle chipping. But she's actually a nice feel of a machine. The main thing in this here is without a doubt the width. Whenever these first came out with the brushless motors, to be honest, if I'm absolutely honest with you, I would have put it as a bit of a gimmick, putting a brushless motor on a corded machine, because generally you're just trying to get it more energy efficient and more power dense. If you want more power out of a machine like this, you can just put on a bigger motor. But I'll be honest, since these actually came out, and they've been out quite a few years now, and I've talked to quite a few tradesmen that use these and the Metabo ones, I have been told by most of them the exact same thing. It's not the power, it's not the energy efficientness, it's not the power density, it's the weight. These things are a lot lighter to actually use. I mean, the weight of this here, this is quite a big rotary hammer, but it's about the weight of a Bosch 5 chipping hammer, which is a lot simpler machine. This here is actually not a bad weight to use. Obviously, if you're doing chipping or drilling, if you're doing cavity insulation or pumping, and you're using that rotary hammer all day long up at chest height, it's a lot of weight to be carrying around and holding up. These here save a lot of weight without compromising on the power, but that's why boys like them. They are a lot lighter and more comfortable to use, and they are, I have to say, quite comfortable to hold anyway. Nice rubberized grip, good trigger on it, easy to use controls. I mean, she feels quite solid on the outside. I do like the way there's no vents down here, because let's face it, working with concrete and muck and whatnot on a building site, most boys throw these down, and here just gets all clogged up and blocks up the airflow for the motor. Here the airflow's coming through this side, so a lot less is going to get stuck on this here where your hand and the handle is. The other thing is the hammer only mode. Nobody wants to be sitting holding that. Nobody wants to be sitting holding the trigger all day. A lot of them will have a way to lock that on, same as this one. It actually has a button on the back for locking on the hammer only. So pull the trigger and push the button. So if you know about a chipping, you don't want to hold the trigger, get into an awkward space, you can hold the hammer any which way you want. You can just leave it on that there, but obviously you can't use it on rotary for obvious reasons. Rotary, you have to be using the trigger, obviously for regulations and whatnot. Like that setup, even the Bosch one, they all have the method of locking the trigger on to use it as a hammer function. The Bosch one, that is a mechanical system built into the actual lever up in here. A wee pin actually shoots out that part of the whole top section, and if it breaks on you, if you take this off wrong and put it on wrong, you crack that wee piece of plastic. It's very expensive to fix. But this one, I like that, and I like the way you have to hold on the trigger to actually lock it on. Hammer only, you don't just press this on its own, because some of the other model is just a button you press. Once you put it over, the light comes on, like the Makita, and you can just press the button and it starts up and leaves it running. Kind of awkward, because if you're not used to it, you're putting the machine down, you accidentally hit the button and you leave it down running. Not that it's a big deal, but I like the way you can't just knock it on. Right, that's the machine, that's what she sounds like, that's how she works. Let's actually start dismantling this thing. Now, to be honest, Hikoki approached me about this collaboration about 5 months ago, and I've done a good few of them, but this is about 5 months on the waiting now. And to be honest, Hikoki, normally do a collaboration video, you're going to get the company coming back to you asking when something's going to be happening or when's the release date. Hikoki, not a word from them. This is just left the machines off with me, do the reviews, do the video anytime I want, and then when they're finished up, we'll just send them all back in one go. But Hikoki, I have to say, very easy going and very, very easy to work with. So I couldn't really complain about them in any way in that regard. Very handy for me. Now that I like straight away. A much softer rubber cap you can actually take off by hand. The Metabo one is a very, very hard, dense rubber and really hard to peel off and get back on again. That's actually a lot nicer. That's more serviceability side of things. Doesn't really matter to boys using it. And like I was saying, the Metabo is very similar to these. Hikoki bought out Metabo, so some of their stuff are not the same, but interchanged. They'll be using some of the tech from one for the other. So I was wondering if this is going to be much, if it's going to be the exact same machine, or if it's going to be a wee bit different, or a completely different machine. It looks very similar, but I can already see there's definitely differences anyway. That for one, but this also is a little bit different. Not that it really matters, but there's a lot more solid fixture onto there. That's only the tool holder. Oh, it's really nice to actually work on a machine that is not absolutely caked in grease and dirt and muck. Because as we know from the videos, hammers can get fairly dirty. So that's what I also like about these here, is a big massive indexing disc for holding these here stops. Some of them, if they're not too strong, they can just break off, then you get your chisel stuck inside. You're not going to have that same problem with this thing anyway. And we still have to do the teardown video on this one as well, the Hikoki drill. But that'll be for another day. But till then, may as well use it while it's here. Easier if I took it out of hammer mode. So I was thinking, this cover's bigger as well. The Metabo one is only a small cover up here. This here's the whole plate. So it's definitely different, and I'd say that hooks onto here. Stop you from pulling it off. These wee screws eventually on any brand either break or wear out or fall off from vibrations. Happens all the time. Then once the screw comes out, like the Bosch, this here starts flapping back and forth. So if it's hooked onto this, that means even with the screw out, it's not going to be sliding back and forth on you. It's always a good start when you see a brown bearing race like that there, or bearing seal. NMB bearing on the bottom, 608. Using a good quality one anyway. Look at the way it's actually set into the plastic housing here. It's on a metal sleeve, so the bearing's not sitting on the plastic housing. So even if this were completely collapse and burn up, it's not just going to destroy the plastic. That's always a good sign of a good brand of a machine there. They put a bit of thought into that. Where is that one made? Made in Singapore. Oh, there's the wee sleeve for the inside. Where will we go next? We'll leave the handle because that's obviously part of the brushless motor. So we'll under the top cover here. I wonder if it'll have the same mechanism as the Metabo one. Oh, this is a lot different actually. So we've got, obviously actually for the rotary mode, you've got a controller for this here too. So that's telling you whenever it's in rotary mode, so that you can't use this button back here. Yeah, we'll just unplug that actually. Right. This one actually is a lot better. Nice big oil seal on it. Decent enough mechanism. So you rotate your knob on top for selecting your mode. It goes through this pin, and it's on a little slider plate here, and that's connected on with this here little spring on either side, so there's a bit of leeway for when it turns. And it connects onto this here metal plate, so it's this whole metal plate that's actually selecting the mode. So that's going back and forth, and it's hooking on to this gear here. So that there's your mode select there. So if you slide it back here, it's actually locking onto this steel plate, and it's locking this in position, which is hooked onto the steel hammer pipe, which locks that into position so it can't rotate around. So now we go into the neutral position, then the 2 zeros. You turn it either side, these here 2 positions, it's free to move. So there's nothing holding it back, it can just rotate. And then when you go the full way on them, and to rotary mode, this locks in the full way, so it locks this ring onto the inner tool holder, and locks this ring up here onto this here bevel gear. So the motor's turning this gear, causing it to rotate. It turns this, which turns your tool holder, which rotates the whole machine, or rotates the whole hammer pipe. That's a lot more solid or more reliable mechanism there. And also, it's not a very thick, heavy gear grease that is hard to move around. It is more like the Makita stuff. So it's nearly like a gel. So even the heat of your hand, it starts to melt it and becomes more liquid. And that's really what you want in these things, because if they're not being used an awful lot, the grease will just stick to the sides here. And then if you're only just using it for 20 or 30 minutes, it's no real time for the machine to heat up, and the grease just always stays there. So it'll eventually keep getting harder and harder. It stays away from the piston and the hammer pipe, and then this all starts to dry up. Then you lose your O-rings, then you lose your hammer. This stuff here, nice hot sunny day, is enough to actually liquefy this a little bit. It gets onto your piston, your hammer, and keeps it all moving. So the more you're using this thing, the more the grease actually keeps getting moved around even more. So it's a nice grease to get. You get that same stuff as in the Makita ones. As you see, the Makita hammers very rarely need to come on for a service. So that off now. This whole handle or cover can just slide off. That's all PA6 GF30, so glass fibre reinforced nylon. And a nice big aluminium gear casing up in here. And actually, that's actually really nice. This is actually a completely different hammer to the Metabo one, to be quite honest with you. It's not the same at all. Wonder how similar the motor is to it. But the gear casing on it, it's nice and short, but she's actually quite bulky. It's not thick. A lot of hammers, I don't know if they're just trying to make them look bigger than they are, or what the way they are, if the mechanism's different inside, but they sort of build them up very tall. The Milwaukee's the same thing. They sort of build this thing up, the crank's up high, and it's so far away from the bottom. The grease sits here, and the piston, the crank, get no grease. Even when you use them all the time and they're getting hot, there's that much space inside, they don't get grease properly. And because they're so tall, if they ever break the con rod or the piston, it gets thrown to one side, and as the crank comes round again, it just literally pokes them out through the side of the aluminium housing up here. So if they're very tall and the crank is lifted up a little bit, it's basically just a thin wall around the side, and very, very weak in case anything breaks. Anything breaks inside, small cheap component, they can destroy the whole gear casing. This one, not the same. You can see it's all down low, nice and compact, and even all around here, look. See how much it's all reinforced. So the crank is going around here, and the con rod is going around just underneath this plate. It's all reinforced in this. So it's very, very solid. So even if that breaks that con rod, I can't see it breaking through that aluminium housing. And every hammer eventually does break a con rod if it's running for enough years. And there's your wee felt sleeve as well for the oil out, for a wee air vent. Now these are obviously full of grease and running. They get hot, pressure builds up. If you know for the grease to get out, it's going to come out down here through the motor, or up here through your lever, or out through the tool holder this side. This is just a wee bleed hole basically. So every hammer has it, but that's in a nice wee location just at the side. Just a wee piece of felt and a wee tiny pinhole. I'll have to take this switch off anyway. I would imagine to take this here handle off. But this is always the bit. The first bit of repairs is always needed on any hammer, generally on the switch or the lead. Same as well, see which way this is set up. So the trigger, just a wee plastic trigger, and then you got a separate switch. Which way is that? It's a bit funny. That actually must be for other machines. I would say that's actually over spec there, look. Obviously that's for spade connectors. Bigger connector for actually putting the leads onto, so that must take the full load. This must be able to take either 110 or 240 volt. But they're just using it as a wee signal switch, just for going back to the controller. So I would say that there is over spec'd. They don't even need anything that heavy. Underneath that foam then it'll just be a wee connector, just like this one. So you can swap out the switch, and the switch in for your locking it on, And again, it's just a button and a spring and a wee switch. That's actually heavier wires than this one. That's just again going back to a wee connector. And I always like to see in any machine, especially hammers and demolition hammers, strip connector. I know that is a very basic thing, but this is the first thing you'll generally ever have to replace in any machine, especially hammers, because they get thrown around, they get pulled about. Boys will drop them down off scaffolding and that, or from a roof, and just hang them down off the lead, or things dropping on them. They're breaking down a wall, a bit of concrete drops off and just hits the lead and cracks it. Generally that's going to be replaced first, so you kind of want it easy to just swap out. If you're getting into spade connectors and other wee bits and pieces, or wiring all the way up to the top of the machine and having to pull everything out, it gets kind of complicated. I just like a straight connector, straight on, just quickly and easily, 2 minutes, swap out the lead. It's exactly what you want. Another connector then hooking on this, which is your power filter coming on, I'd imagine. That's not your control board. I'd imagine that's inside of here. I'll see, that's just cleaning the signal maybe, making sure the controller's safe. Maybe I'm wrong in that. Let me know in the comments section. What do you reckon? Another wee connector here, la. Whatever that one was for, la. There must have been something else for this. Maybe it was omitted, or maybe there's another bigger model or something that has another feature. You have the wiring for it on it. So the motors, where I'd imagine this is going to get a bit more complicated. Oh, this is going to get a bit more complicated. Which way can I do this? Ah, we'll just disconnect, pull all this out. That off. Take that out. And we'll take these out. Should hopefully, yeah, pull a whole lot out. Look at that for a controller. All the wires all wrapped as well, though, even the ones back here. 2 big rows of MOSFETs running down this side, and 4 big capacitors this side, all potted on to a big controller. That's nice there, hey? It also has the big bridge rectifier showing as well. You can actually nearly access that there. That there's actually making sure you've got only DC going into the controller. So it's basically a big diode, and it only lets current run one direction. So it ends up just AC coming in and DC coming out of it. That a lot of the time can be one of the first things to go. So it's nice you can actually see it there. And they're all sitting on big aluminium plates here, look, to keep them nice and cool. You can see lots of the cooling paste still squeezing out through the sides of it. Wee controller then for selecting your speed again. So no actual wee ribbon connector, so you can swap that out. I like all the wires, just with nice braided sleeves on them, so everything's nicely protected. There's not going to be any chafing and wearing on the machine. Let's see how hard the motor section is to get off. They're tight anyway. Look at that. That's some job. You can see why these things are a lot lighter to use. Even the fan, big thin steel washer on top of it. So obviously tight tolerance. If it rubs in the aluminium, it melts the plastic, the nylon, or else breaks off the fins. It's got a nice steel plate on top to make sure it doesn't rub. Or if it does rub, it's not going to melt this. Same in the bottom, or that's actually your magnet more than likely. Or maybe these are. No, this is your magnet here. This must be reinforcing for the fan. That's a nice rotor there, hey? And again, good size bearing on it. And good quality. Nice NSK bearings. Couldn't ask for better. Nice rotor on it. Good heavy gearbox. That's where the main weight is. That's how these things can be so light to use. Saves a lot of weight in the motor and still getting the same, if not more, power compared to a brushed machine. Nice, look at that. That controller nearly weighs as much as the field itself. That's how much aluminium and reinforcings on it and resin. That's the dearest part there. That's what's really costing the most money, and you have to do repairs in this. The stator wouldn't be too expensive. The rotor would be a wee bit more expensive, but still well worth changing. This will be worth changing, but it will be one of the dearest parts. So you want that well protected, which it is. And then if you need to change it, you don't have to go replacing everything. These are on wee strip connectors only. Not your dog standard spade connectors either. Bullet connectors are extra reinforced. Not hard to replace if you need to. Sometimes they can go if you're using something like a generator that's not voltage regulated. If it runs on or gets a massive surge, it's going to go onto the machine, and it can sometimes go onto the controller and blow that. But I would hope this would blow this boy before it'll blow this. That'll be a lot cheaper to replace. That's what I imagine. That's going to be some sort of wee regulator to regulate the voltage again on, and to ease out any spikes just in case, to keep this nice and safe. But that is a nice controller, hey. Field then, it's just sitting inside of this housing. Again, nice housing. Look at that, look. Steel inserts in the housing as well for the bolts to actually bolt this to here. So obviously if you over tighten these, you're just squashing the plastic. Never seen a hammer where it has a steel insert in this. You can tighten these up as much as you want. It's clamping the steel insert onto the aluminium. That's why they were so tight, or how they can get them so tight. They weren't just locked in because of the Loctite. They're actually on, torqued on extra tight because of these here. So that's a nice wee feature there. Obviously over time, these running, if things can become loose, you wear out the aluminium on the housing, or you wear out the housing here. Once this starts moving, you're losing your tolerance for the field to the rotor, then this will start to rub. Could burn out your rotor, could burn out your stator, could wear out the rotor, or it could cause problems with your controller. They're keeping all them problems away by just putting these here inserts on. So they're reinforcing the plastic body off the motor, which is actually quite strong already, and making sure they can bolt these on extra tight so they're not going to come loose. Never seen that in any brand. That's actually really nice. And then not to forget the steel insert down here for that there bearing. That's where you can tell they're actually thinking about longevity on a machine. Bearings eventually will fail no matter what they are. Even if they're the best of the best NSK Japanese ones, they'll eventually fail. And if they fall apart, they'll take out your housing, and then you have to more money for a 6-year part. So that just means if it falls apart or heats up, it's not taking out the housing. It's going to be wearing this metal, which won't wear that much compared to the bearing. So the heat won't destroy this. You see things like that, and really old Hitachi and Makita circular saws, the bigger 9-inch ones and that. That's what they see in the back of them, where you'll see a big steel insert, and the bearings can be changed 4 or 5 times throughout the life of the machine, and the housing's still good because of these here. That's a good sign of any brand when they're using that there. So that's the motor. Very impressed with that, I have to say. But let's see what the hammer section's like. So this is a plate to hold everything down. So this is where it's going to get messy as well. That's keeping the con rod at the bottom, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. It's also holding down this here, which is the lock plate. Now, sure, obviously I can't take it out because the hammer pipe's still installed. It's actually done a little like the Bosch there, look. The steel sleeve and all the oil seal all on it. Nice reassembly, but you can actually buy everything individually as well. That's quite nice there. And this is a separate tool holder. I hope so, because it can get very expensive to replace. The tool holder is part of the hammer pipe, because you do sometimes need to replace these things. Bear with me here because I haven't opened one of these before. I have to be a wee bit of learning here as I'm going. Yeah, 2 separate parts. So you got your hammer pipe, and then you got your tool holder. 2 separate sections. If these are all together, obviously it's going to be a lot more expensive to replace. Generally, you'll never need to replace the hammer pipe, but the wee keyways inside the tool holder can wear out. So if things gets 10 or 20 years old, eventually then keyways will wear out, especially for a rotary hammer. And then when you try to bore something, then the chisel will just spin inside the tool holder. If it ever happens, you can just replace the tool holder then without messing around with this. Plus, just for servicing, that's why I like it myself, it's because you can easily get the striker bolt inside. So sometimes if you're getting especially very dirty environments, if you're using the muck and dirt and grit and it's all getting inside the tool holder and you're not using your hammer grease to keep the inside lubed up, the dirt will eventually get onto this and can sometimes bind it. So if it gets bound up, you just have to free it up again. So it's handy just to be able to pull off the tool holder, pull out them pins, take these apart and clean this here out. So it's just like every other hammer then afterwards. You got your steel ring at the front, a rubber damper, and another steel ring. Nice tool holder and a nice hammer pipe. Then your hammer width inside. That's the forces actually going forward and hitting your impact bolt. So your piston's going back and forth here, and that's making an air cushion, a seal between this. So as your piston's coming back and forth, sort of pulling this here hammer weight along with it. There'll be an air cushion in between. The 2 seals will make a bit of air, an air gap. So when it pulls back, it makes a vacuum and sucks it. When it goes forward, it's compressing air and pushing it. And this is hitting your impact bolt, which is now stuck to the rotor. That's what's hitting this. And this here is then hitting your chisel at the front of your hammer. I don't know what I'm going to do about the dirt. This is going to get messy. So that'll all have to come in and out as one piece, I would imagine. Yeah, because that's sealed the whole way around. All metal parts, no plastic with gears and rings. A nice piston, nylon, glass fibre reinforced nylon head, and aluminium corner rod down. To be honest, there's not much difference between an aluminium one and a plastic one. They both have their advantages and disadvantages, and they both basically last around the same amount of time. One thing about the aluminium ones is generally they will have a needle bearing. It'll run a lot smoother, but eventually if that fails, you'll have to either replace the needle bearing or replace the corn rod itself, which you can do. You can buy them separately anyway. But the nylon ones, whenever they wear out, they just wear out the nylon and they'll start rattling around inside. Either one, if they fail completely, can take out the pin for the crank. Doesn't really matter. But strength wise, you're not getting any advantage over either one. The nylon one's probably a little stronger, to be quite honest with you. And then the crank then is actually done like the older Bosch hammer. You see a lot of my videos now do a lot of complaining about the Bosch GSH5 hammers. They're just not lasting. The gears are wearing out in them. But if you go back 15 or 20 years, the same hammer, or the rotary one, lasts easily 20 years. I used to put it down to the oil that was on it, but it's actually the way it's built. And that's actually built the same way as the older Bosch. So it's sitting on a centre pin here, look. Never seen this in a Hikoki actually. There's a steel pin the whole way up through the centre of this aluminium housing here. You'd think this is a weaker design, but it's actually an awful lot stronger because it keeps the centre of gravity down low at the bottom. So the strains down this side are not lifted up and been amplified by the lever effect. That there is actually a really nice setup here. So there's your steel pin wash on the bottom. Two good needle bearings on it as well. Done the exact same way as the Bosch. Gears are a wee bit smaller, mind you. But because that gear's so low down, there's very little play. So the rotor isn't going to wear out either of these here gears very easily. And obviously if you do wear out your crank, you can easily just pop that off and replace it. That I like a lot. That's a good setup there. Now what's all the rest of the stuff? Oh, right. Look at this. Counterweights. That's something you only really see in the Makitas and that. So as that there's running, this is a steel weight on these two springs. So it's a damper effect. So whenever your thing's hammering away, the energy gets onto the ground, onto the chisel, beating away. But some of it also goes back into your handle. That's where the rubber at the back of your handle's for, to take away some of the vibrations. But this is actually a damper as well. So as the hammer's moving back and forth, so is this. So this is counteracting the damping, the forward and back motion off the hammer, dampening it down. Doesn't take away the vibrations, it takes away the strain out of your hand. So it makes it a lot easier to actually use in the long run. So that's nice to see there. Covered in grease, mind you. Try to keep us as clean as possible. We'll have to see how hard it is to get back in again as well, because it's just spring loaded. So you got two wee steel plates, or metal plates actually. Down this side you got a steel rod going across and two springs going onto this here steel weight connected on both sides. So this is one part, two springs, two pins and two holders. So they all have to compress in to get them lined up and placed back inside. And I'd say they'd be sided as well. Yeah, but you can just spin them around. A nice clutch there. Generally clutch shouldn't give very much trouble unless these here needles bearings on the bottom ever give trouble. They all look the same too. Yeah, so same needle bearing for everything. Makes it a lot cheaper to replace. The more parts, and the individual parts, the more expensive they're going to be. If it's just one type, and if there's 4 different types of needle bearing, there's 4 different parts, that puts the price of them way up. If they're all the exact same, keeps the price down. So there's your clutch then. So if you're bind up and you're drilling, that's what's actually going to slip. So if you're ever drilling, you're slipping, make sure you stop, because these here, generally, the more you start getting them to slip, the weaker they become. They start to wear inside, and they slip more easily every single time thereafter. So if you keep doing it, you eventually wear these things out. but if they wear complete and they keep slipping, you can just swap them out. So that's it, folks. That is the whole Hikoki DH40 brushless hammer, completely stripped apart. And I have to say, it's not looking like a bad machine at all. That's your gear housing especially. That's seriously heavy there. Wasn't expecting it to be this thick. Nice oil seal on it, nice solid aluminium bottom for the bearings holding in, and just a nice size and thickness of everything. All steel reinforced inserts up on here where the rotor is actually going round, and a steel sleeve on here for the needle bearings, and obviously a pin for the crank. That there's looking like a good part there, but everything about this, I have to say, is ticking the right boxes anyway. It's nice that they have the dampers, but everything else, good hammer pipe, good tool holder, good that you can replace it, decent size motor on it, nicely built, really good controller. The build quality of the machine is all there. Good clutch, especially the crank and the way it's sitting on this here pin, very much like that. Good size piston as well. To be honest, I am actually liking this machine quite a bit. It's nice and handy to actually dismantle as well. It's not overly complicated. You could easily do this yourself. The more easy it is to actually dismantle and rebuild, the more likely and more easy it's going to be for places to actually service and repair them. So if you had one of these and it wasn't hammering anymore, 3 O-rings is what you basically need to replace. The impact bolt, the piston, and the hammer, and then fresh grease. That'll get this thing up and running again. If you want to do a service on it, you would also change the 2 bearings on the armature as well, and the oil seal here, just in case it ever did fail and leak grease. Apart from that, the only other thing you're maybe changing is the piston here, and then the needle roller bearings for the crank and your clutch here. That there would give this thing a good full service. Maybe the oil seal at the front as well, just in case anything leaks up inside of this side. But the actual gear selection, this is not done like the Metabo at all. We've seen the Metabo and getting good reviews on it, but the one thing it does do is the rotation for the chisel, when it's in chisel only mode, eventually wears and starts to spin on its own, or won't lock into position, because there's a plastic ring up inside of here that locks into the tool holder, or the hammer body up inside of here. That wears, and the actual selector gears up in here wear as well, and cause it to have too much play, which makes it slip. That's the biggest fault with the Metabo one. To be honest, ain't that big a problem. It's not that expensive to get it fixed again, and you can even fix it yourself. Few wee parts is all you need to change. I've actually done a video on that before, but apart from that, that's the only complaint I've been seeing on the Metabo one. I've seen no problems with this, but this is built totally different. This is a proper selector on it and a proper ring gear. Where is it? For selecting back and forth. So this is a much more solid way to actually change the modes on it. A very, very good setup. I actually like this quite a lot. Looking at it, negative points. To be honest, I'm doing a video like this here, there's always negative things. Most of them are only minor. I mightn't even bring them up because I've just been nitpicking. But to be honest, there's not really a lot of negative things I could even try and make in this. Probably the biggest thing is the top cover. That's still a plastic cover, and that's probably the biggest thing I could say negative about it. But this is just for selecting the mode and for sealing the top of it. There's plenty of other brands, even the Makitas have a plastic top cover. Maybe the selector, because this is a switch, there'll be a magnet in this for picking up this little magnetic pickup. Maybe that there can get bunged up with dirt. If you're using this near anything metal, maybe wee bits of metal will stick to it. Apart from that, I can't really see anything negative about this. Even this cover, the fact that it's plastic, there's still another cover over the top of it, so it's not like it's going to get broken if it's dropped. This is still protecting it. But there's not much negative I can actually point out on this here. I have to say, I do like this setup. Especially from a repair point of view, it is easy to strip apart, as you can see, and rebuilding shouldn't be a problem either. There's nothing in it that you could call confusing or complicated. There's no bits and pieces you have to figure out orientations. I have to say I am liking this. Maybe the controller, because it looks like it might be a different motor from the Metabo one, unless this is a completely new design. But that there to me looks a decent setup there, and all sealed up. The air deflector, again, might be a little bit light. It's only plastic like every brand, but there's not really much to it. But then it's a brushless motor, shouldn't really need an air deflector all that much. There's not that much heat being generated. Some of the good points on it is definitely that armature. That's seriously heavy duty with good bearings on it and a lot of effort and thought put into the fan. I've never seen a fan with an actual metal plate top and bottom to prevent wear in that. That's really cool. The body of it is again a good weight. Nice size of a motor. Nice the way you can actually strip it all apart and disconnect the wires, take the whole thing out. There's nothing that's going to be fixed and wires you have to unsolder in that. The tool holder especially, I was thinking this was going to be one piece, but it's good that you can actually change that, but that only matters further on down the line when it's about 10 years old or so, 10 or 15 years. I have to say, I like this thing. But like I say, this is just build quality and how it's made. The other thing is performance, but as we know ourselves, you can't really tell performance on a brand new machine. It's only after years of use that you're going to give true indication. The Metabo ones, like I said, are basically tried and tested. Couldn't really fault them at all. For the wee thing that goes wrong, you couldn't really fault it for that there. I mean, even the Bosch one cost about the same money, and after a year or two, they're stripping out the gears inside and stripping out the gear and the armature and completely writing off the machines. I mean, that's a serious fault. These here cannot say they have the same problem. And especially on a brushless motor, that's going to be a lot cheaper to replace than a brushed motor. But now, it's time to get it rebuilt again. Hopefully, there should be nothing too complicated about putting this back in again. As long as I remember which way it went. This is probably the most complicated piece, or the most difficult bit. Getting these dampers back in, because you just have to compress the springs without it shooting off in your face. I'll need to get these on first before we put the piston on. So that will actually be going the other way around, like so. These will just have to drop in together. I'm wrong on that, it's the wrong way around. It was this way. Gears up the top, this is at the bottom. Awkward when you have to do it all together, but then that's the same as the Bosch one, like I was saying. So we can just drop in there. Your hammer pipe. Go back on. There's another wee washer here as well, I think. They're on there, and that sleeve holds them on. This ring holds the sleeve on. Yeah, there we go. That is actually off of here. It's acting like a little shim. Just slide that on. Doesn't need to be exact yet until we get the hammer pipe back. O-ring always goes towards the piston. I'll just slide on. Hammer pipe. Just have to give this a little twist. Make sure you're getting that washer first, or shim. And then make sure you get onto the gear, because this will be sliding onto the keyways in the tool holder. So you have to get that engaged Whilst also lining up this here seal. This here washer at the top, the two keyways, has to go onto the body of the machine too. So they have to go on right, otherwise they'll not go on fully. So that's the gear locked in now. And that's partly in. You can go ahead, give a seal a push, see if it didn't actually go on rightly. Push that down. Click it on. Make sure that seats. And that's it. There's rotary, neutral, and hammer only. That's the main. It's just a steel plate. Hold that down and lock this in place. Let's actually also lock it onto this bar too, to keep that rigid. This drill is actually way too big and strong for this job. If you didn't have that in clutch mode, that thing would just strip out them screws in 2 seconds. Armature, we should be good to put it on. Line up the gears, just give it a wee wiggle into place. You can actually hear the compression on that. I was a wee bit safer doing this. Obviously the wires here are colour coded. Do not mix them up. These were sitting on here, so I might as well just put them back in again. Keep that in place, squeeze this on. Match up your colours, red for red, black for black. So that's them. These fitted sideways. One here. The other over here. These big sheaths on the wire, great for keeping the wire safe and stopping anything from rubbing or chafing, but a torture when you're reinstalling everything, because they make everything that wee bit tighter. Should be the handle. And which way does that handle work? So this is preventing that from coming off, so I should be able to put this on first. Put it into the same position first. Make sure this lever hooks onto this gear or the steel ring. Just give it a wee test. That's okay. That's on. Suppose we connect this up. Slide on the cover. Just put a screw in that. Screw for this one. This top cover over the top of everything. Lastly now, just a tool holder. And your sleeve has to match that. And we also have the rubber to go on. Lastly, rubber cap. That is her, folks. That is the new Hikoki brushless DH40MEY2, fully stripped down and rebuilt. And I have to say, that actually is looking like a nice machine. decent sized motor, really good hammer section, good quality bearings fitted. They seem to have put a lot of effort into this here machine. Good selector mechanism up inside and not overly complicated on the inside, so very easy to work on to fix up, service and rebuild. And the handle as well, switches and controls, all replaceable. I like the way there's a second board here for filtering out to make sure that control board is good as well. Good quality brushless motor and controller. These here I'm liking more and more all the time. Make sure she's actually sounding right now. That there, it's a cracking wee machine. Definitely one to be looking at, folks, if you're looking for a chipping hammer or a rotary hammer. These here Hikokis and the Metabos are well worth a look. But that Hikoki one, I have to say, is very nice. I like the way the front doesn't have the same problem as the Metabo one. There's no problem with the chisel locking into position. That's a much more solid way of actually doing it up inside of here. Build quality of this thing, folks, I think is very good. I think as you can see yourselves from the video, that there has got absolutely nothing wrong with it. Very little I could say negative about this thing at all. And the actual look of her and feel of her seems to be very good too. We tied up still a wee bit of grease laying around here. But that's it, folks. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this Hikoki teardown video. Big thank you for Hikoki for actually sending this here in for the video, because they sent it in to the channel for this here purpose, just to show off the build quality. I'm getting nothing out of this, and these all have to be returned to Hikoki whenever I'm finished all these videos. So this is a completely honest review on it. I've not been given any script on this at all. This has just been dropped off by the Hikoki rep just to do a video on. Whatever comes of it, comes of it. That's the way I was told. I was told if it was going to be a bad video, just to give them a heads up before it was released. But that's it. I have to say, that there is a very good machine. As you know, the shop I work for sells the Hikoki nail guns, and they're getting great feedback on them. They've got the power, the reliability, and they're saving money in the long run. They're running for a few years, no problem, and the money they're saving on gas alone is paying for themselves, so people are liking them. So where's the shop I work for stocking all the Hikoki nail guns, to be honest. The first fix, second fix, the angled nails, the 18 gauge, the 23, the staple gun, and the concrete later. And I think getting a few more staple guns and a coil later nail gun as well. They're basically doing a full selection because people are wanting them. But they're going to have to seriously start considering if they're going to start taking on Hikoki hammers as well, because some of the Bosch hammers are giving a wee bit of trouble. Not all of them, mind you. The 5 chipping hammer eventually wear out, and the 7 has a problem with the gears where they just eventually smash the gears and the armature inside. That's an issue for them because they don't want to be selling machines that aren't going to be reliable. These here are starting to prove themselves to be as reliable as the nail guns. So I'm going to have to start seriously thinking about these here or the Metabo hammers as well. And to be honest, wasn't going to put it in a video, but last week we got an email out from Hikoki, not we, the shop got an email out, their office got a deal where they're giving away a free battery with some tools. And they had to actually go and double check with the supplier. It was a brand new thing just released from Europe. Buy certain Hikoki tools, cordless tools, and you got a free battery with it whenever you registered online. But it's even down to some of the kits. It's drill and impactor, and if you register the 2 of them individually online, you get another battery. So you can buy a kit with drills and impactors and batteries, and then get another 2 batteries, 5 amp hour batteries on top of it again. There's actually massive savings and changing over to Hikoki at the minute. And then on top of that, they're offering a 5-year warranty on their machines. It's becoming a no-brainer. They basically are starting to take over. When they're putting out quality like this here, you can basically see why. The nail guns are proving themselves, these are proving themselves, and the offers they're offering to get people over to them are well worth picking up, to be quite honest. Plus, the amount of tools they have and their selection, they do suit just about every trade there is. But these here, this hammer in particular, I have to say, I definitely like. If you're looking for a decent hammer, folks, do check them out. The DH40MEY2 brushless Hikoki hammer. That brushless motor has loads of power, but keeps the weight of the machine down nice and low, so it's a more comfortable machine to use. Build quality of this thing, folks, is fairly good. I like this here quite a lot. Plus, she looks really good. I like the black and green on them, unlike the older Hitachi. As you can see, they went for a nicer green compared to the older Hitachis, and they haven't went overboard like Hitachi used to do on the actual design of it. I sort of wanted to make these things look like space guns or something for all this moulding. Never really liked this here. The older Hitachi stuff was a lot more basic and a lighter shade of green. These here ones, when they started changing, became a more brighter green and put all these extra effects on it, which didn't really make any sense. They were just there to make it look good. These here, since they become my Hikoki, they've really just dropped the whole aesthetic side of things and just kept it nice and simple. The nicer sort of lighter, darker green colour and a black body. Keeping it nice and simple and no extra lines and ripples and whatnot to make it look more advanced than what it is. Keeping it simple and just good quality and putting the effort into the machine instead of the outside of the machine. Hikoki, definitely one to be watching. Anyway folks, as always, thanks for watching. If you're liking these here videos and the teardowns, make sure to give us a wee like and a follow down below. And if you want to help out the channel, you can also become members as well, or join the Patreon fund as well for putting donations on towards the tool teardown videos. But anyway folks, as always, thanks for watching. Big shout out for Hikoki for setting us here on. Must get our box up again now and get it back to Hikoki. But thanks for watching folks. I'll chat to you again the next time. Cheers.